When fans think of Tyrus, they picture the towering former WWE and NWA star, the powerhouse with unmatched charisma, quick wit, and commanding presence both inside and outside the ring. But behind the bold personality that millions recognize from television, there's always been a quieter side, one that most never get to see. For years, Tyrus, real name George Murdoch, kept his personal life fiercely private. While the cameras captured his confidence, humor, and sometimes controversial takes, he rarely spoke about his family or love life. Fans speculated, tabloids guessed, but Tyrus stayed silent. That is, until now. At 51, the man known for his strength and outspoken views just revealed something few expected. He's officially married, and his wife's identity has left fans speechless. Not because she's a celebrity, but because of how different she is from what the public imagined. She isn't from Hollywood, wrestling, or politics. Instead, she's the woman who stood by him through his hardest battles, long before the fame and lights ever found him. In a heartfelt ceremony surrounded by close friends and family, Tyrus said "I do" to the woman he calls his peace. And according to those who were there, his vows brought the room to tears. So who is this mystery woman who finally tamed one of wrestling's toughest men? How did they meet? And what does this new chapter mean for Tyrus? The man, not the media personality? This is the story of Tyrus's Tyrus had always seemed larger than life, both in size and personality. From his explosive wrestling career to his commanding presence as a political commentator, everything about him screamed control, confidence, and strength. But when it came to love, that was one area of his life he kept completely locked away. Few people knew the truth, that behind the bold exterior was a man who had quietly been searching for peace, loyalty, and something real. That search ended unexpectedly, far from the glitz of TV studios and wrestling arenas. According to those close to him, Tyrus first met his now wife years ago at a charity event in Louisiana. It wasn't love at first sight, at least not the kind that happens in movies. What started as a friendly conversation over mutual interests quickly turned into hours of laughter. She wasn't intimidated by his fame or his past. Instead, she treated him like anyone else in the room. For a man used to being judged by headlines and sound bites, that simple act stood out more than any compliment ever could. Over time, the two stayed in touch. They would talk late into the night about everything, from life's struggles to faith, family, and purpose. While Tyrus was busy juggling the chaos of his career, she offered something no spotlight could provide: stability. She grounded him, reminding him that strength isn't about how loud you speak, but how calmly you endure. Friends say she became his anchor during some of his darkest moments, especially when his public life became overwhelming. Fame brought criticism, online battles, and controversy, but through it all, she remained patient. She never sought attention, never used his name to gain followers or publicity. Instead, she stayed in the background, offering quiet support when the cameras turned off. Tyrus once admitted in an interview that the best people in his life were the ones you never see. Those who truly knew him understood exactly who he was talking about. Their love grew naturally, not through lavish gestures, but through shared values. She wasn't impressed by his wrestling titles or TV contracts. She admired his work ethic, his honesty, and his protective heart. For Tyrus, who had spent years building a public image, finding someone who loved him for the man behind the persona was a revelation. When the world shut down during the pandemic, their bond deepened even further. While others struggled with distance, Tyrus and his partner found peace in isolation. They cooked together, talked for hours, and built a rhythm that felt like home. It was during that time he realized that she wasn't just a partner. She was the one. Still, few expected Tyrus to ever walk down the aisle again. But life has a way of surprising even the most stubborn souls. When he finally proposed, it wasn't with a grand announcement or public spectacle. It was private, heartfelt, and deeply personal, just the way they both wanted it. By the time word got out about the marriage, fans were stunned. Many couldn't believe Tyrus had kept such a major event under wraps, but those who know him best said it made perfect sense. "He's finally found someone who doesn't need the world's approval, just his," said one close friend. In the end, it wasn't fame that captured Tyrus's heart, but authenticity, the rare kind that doesn't fade when the lights go out. A wife, and the love that changed everything. When the news finally broke that Tyrus had gotten married, the internet exploded. Fans flooded social media with disbelief, excitement, and endless curiosity. "Wait, Tyrus is married?" One fan wrote on X, while another joked, "He managed to keep this secret better than most politicians keep their promises." But while the world was just finding out, those close to Tyrus knew the ceremony had taken place weeks earlier in a private, intimate setting, far away from cameras, reporters, or any form of public display. There were no sponsorships, no flashy celebrity guests, no million-dollar venue. Instead, it was held at a quiet ranch surrounded by close friends and family, reflecting everything Tyrus valued most: privacy, loyalty, and sincerity. Sources say the ceremony was deeply emotional. Tyrus, who was never one for sentimentality, reportedly choked up when he saw his bride walking down the aisle. "He's always been the strong one," said a family friend. But that day you could see how much she meant to him. It was like the walls around his heart finally came down. The bride, elegant, calm, and understated, wore a simple gown that perfectly matched the tone of the day. There were no magazine photographers waiting outside, no red carpets. Instead, guests described laughter, heartfelt speeches, and a sense of peace that hung over the entire event. Tyrus gave a short but powerful speech during the reception. He didn't talk about fame, fortune, or accomplishments. He talked about gratitude. Gratitude for finding someone who saw through the armor he had worn for years. He told his guests, "This isn't about what I've done. It's about who I finally became because of her." Those words left not a dry eye in the room. Still, the moment the marriage became public knowledge, speculation began to swirl. Paparazzi scrambled to get photos of his new wife, while entertainment outlets speculated about who she was. But true to form, Tyrus didn't feed the gossip. He made no official announcement, no press release, just a brief acknowledgement that he was a happily married man. That silence spoke volumes. For years, Tyrus had lived in a world that thrived on controversy and confrontation, from wrestling feuds to political debates. But this was one part of his life he refused to turn into content. Insiders say that's exactly what his wife admired most about him, his ability to separate the man from the persona. Even so, fans couldn't help but notice how different Tyrus seemed afterward. On TV appearances, he carried himself with a calmer energy, still confident, but more grounded. In interviews, when asked about his personal life, he simply smiled and deflected. One co-host even teased, "Marriage looks good on you," to which Tyrus replied with a rare grin, "Yeah, I'd say I'm doing all right." Behind the scenes, the couple settled into married life quietly. They spent more time at home, enjoying simple routines far removed from the chaos of celebrity life. She cooked, he gardened, both valuing the small joys that fame often overlooks. In an age where celebrity weddings are sold as media spectacles, Tyrus's decision to keep his love story private was refreshing. It reminded people that even public figures can still crave normalcy, that not every chapter of fame needs to be shared with the world. Those close to him say the marriage changed him in profound ways. "He's softer now," one friend said. "More patient, more at peace." For someone who's fought his whole life, in the ring and outside it, it's like he finally stopped fighting. It wasn't a celebrity headline that defined this moment, but something far rarer, a quiet, genuine happiness that needed no validation from anyone. For years, Tyrus's fans only saw the man on TV, the no-nonsense commentator, the tough wrestler, the sharp-tongued personality who never backed down from an argument. But the woman who captured his heart saw someone entirely different. Her name rarely appeared in headlines. She wasn't from the entertainment industry, nor did she seek attention. In fact, that's exactly what drew Tyrus to her. She lived far from Hollywood's bright lights, a woman grounded in reality. someone who valued family, honesty, and quiet strength over fame or fortune. They met long before his career reached its peak. Back then, Tyrus was still navigating the ups and downs of life after wrestling, trying to redefine himself in a world that loved him one day and criticized him the next. He was loud, opinionated, and sometimes too blunt for his own good, but she saw through it all. She saw the man under the armor, one of Tyrus's close friends shared. She didn't fall for the persona, the performer, or the TV guy. She fell for George, the man who jokes too much when he's nervous, who secretly reads history books, and who'd rather stay home than go to a party. Their relationship wasn't easy. Fame brought challenges that few could understand. Paparazzi lurked, rumors circulated, and public pressure often tested their bond. But she stayed by his side through every storm, becoming his quiet anchor when the world tried to pull him apart. "She has this calming energy," another source said. "When he's upset, she doesn't argue. She listens. When he's frustrated, she reminds him of how far he's come. She doesn't compete with his personality. She balances it." It wasn't long before those closest to them realized how much she had changed him. Gone was the man who always had to win every debate or prove every point. In his place was someone who had learned to pause, reflect, and, for the first time, let someone else in. Their love story was never about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was about small, meaningful moments. Sunday mornings spent in quiet conversation. Late-night drives where they'd talk about everything and nothing. Texts during long workdays that said simply, "I'm proud of you." Tyrus has often said on air that he doesn't believe in perfection, only effort. And that's exactly how they approach their marriage. "We argue," he once admitted with a grin. "But the thing is, we never stop talking. That's what keeps us strong." For her, being married to Tyrus meant accepting both sides of the man, the fierce and the gentle, the outspoken and the vulnerable. She wasn't intimidated by his fame or bothered by his critics. She knew the man who came home after a long day, kicked off his shoes, and melted into a quiet laugh as their dog jumped into his lap. Friends say she gave him something he didn't even know he needed: peace. A peace that came not from success, but from being truly understood. For a man whose entire career was built on strength, the greatest gift was finding someone who made him feel safe enough to be soft. And in return, Tyrus made sure she always knew how much she meant to him. Whether through subtle public comments or private gestures, he never missed an opportunity to express his gratitude. "She didn't marry the TV star," one close friend said. "She married the man who fought hard to be worthy of her." Their relationship wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, imperfect, and deeply human. And that's what made it beautiful. For Tyrus, marriage wasn't the end of his journey. It was the start of something far more profound. After decades of grinding, fighting, and proving himself in every arena imaginable, he found himself in a place of peace he had never known before. The same man who once thrived on confrontation now cherished quiet mornings, shared coffee, and long talks on the porch with the woman who had become his everything. Those who've known him the longest say he's transformed, not because he's changed who he is, but because for the first time he feels complete. He doesn't have to perform anymore, a close friend shared. With her, he can just be. That simplicity was rare in his world, a world of cameras, scripts, and constant public scrutiny. Yet in her presence, Tyrus finally found the freedom that fame could never give him. Their marriage marked more than a personal milestone. It became a quiet symbol of resilience, of surviving chaos and finding love when the world least expects it. Tyrus had spent much of his life building walls. Growing up without much, then fighting his way through professional wrestling, television, and politics, he'd learned early on to trust few people. Every scar had taught him to protect himself. But she was different. She didn't try to fix him. She simply stayed. "She saw the best and worst of him," said a friend who attended their wedding. But she never walked away. That kind of loyalty is rare, and it's exactly what he needed. Now, when Tyrus appears in interviews, fans notice something different. He's still sharp, still opinionated, but there's a warmth behind the words, a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. The man who once carried the weight of proving himself now carries gratitude instead. In a rare interview after his marriage became public, Tyrus was asked what had changed most in his life. He smiled and said, "Everything I used to chase, the recognition, the validation, the noise, it doesn't matter anymore. I go home and I've already got everything I need." That single statement said more than any headline ever could. For a man who'd battled through controversy, career shifts, and constant judgment, Tyrus had found peace not in a trophy or a title, but in love. His wife remains out of the spotlight by choice, but her quiet strength continues to shape his every day. Together, they've built a life centered not around fame, but around family and faith. They spend weekends with close friends, visiting favorite spots, and often enjoy what he calls radio silence, days where phones are off, and the world fades away. Those close to the couple describe them as inseparable. "He calls her his calm," one friend said. "Whenever life gets noisy, she's the place he returns to." And perhaps that's what makes their story resonate with so many. In a world where fame often destroys relationships, Tyrus's story reminds us that even the toughest people can still crave softness, that behind every loud personality, there's a human heart searching for connection. At 51, Tyrus isn't slowing down. He's still working, still speaking his truth, still doing what he loves. But now there's a balance, a deeper purpose guiding every move. And while fans continue to debate his words and actions, one thing remains undeniable. He's finally happy. In the end, the wedding wasn't just about vows or rings. It was about redemption, about finding love that outlasts fame, and peace that outshines applause. For a man who's fought all his life, Tyrus finally found something he'll never have to fight for again, a love that feels like home.